The security footage shows it all in grainy black and white. A young woman in scrubs running through the marble corridors of the Blackstone mansion at 3:47 a.m., clutching a 5-year-old girl to her chest. By morning, both would vanish without a trace, leaving behind only questions and a billionaire's desperate search for answers. But to understand why Zara Williams, a 24-year-old nanny from Detroit, would risk everything to protect little Sophia Blackstone, we must go back 6 months earlier, to the day she first walked through those gilded gates. Zara's hands trembled as she approached the towering iron gates of the Blackstone estate. At 24, she had already survived 3 foster homes, 2 years of nursing school she couldn't afford to finish, and a string of jobs that barely kept her studio apartment. The ad had seemed too good to be true. Live-in nanny for 5-year-old, competitive salary, immediate start. What it hadn't mentioned was that the 5-year-old belonged to Marcus Blackstone, tech mogul, pharmaceutical empire heir, and one of the youngest billionaires in America. "You're late," came the cold voice of Mrs. Hartwell, the estate manager, as Zara was escorted through hallways lined with paintings worth more than most people's houses. "Mr. Blackstone doesn't tolerate tardiness." But it wasn't Marcus Blackstone who made Zara's breath catch. It was the small figure hunched in the corner of the grand living room. Sophia Blackstone sat alone on a velvet sofa that dwarfed her tiny frame, dark curls falling across her face as she stared at nothing. Before we dive in, take a moment to drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? I love seeing how far these stories reach across the globe. And if this one already has you hooked, don't wait. Hit that subscribe button now. I've got another powerful story dropping tomorrow, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's get into it. The child who should have been running, laughing, playing, sat as still as the marble statues that adorned her father's home. "She doesn't speak much," Mrs. Hartwell explained with clinical detachment, "not since her mother died 2 years ago. The previous nannies, well, they found her too challenging." Too challenging. Zara knelt in front of the little girl, recognizing something in those hollow eyes, the same emptiness she'd seen in her own reflection during those long nights in foster care. "Hi, Sophia," Zara whispered. "My name is Zara. I like your dress. Purple is my favorite color, too." For the first time, Sophia looked up. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted. Neither of them knew they had just found the missing piece of their broken hearts. Marcus Blackstone was a man who controlled empires with a phone call, whose decisions affected millions of lives across the globe. But when he looked at his daughter, all that power meant nothing. He stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching Zara read to Sophia, his jaw tight with the familiar ache of helplessness. "She used to love bedtime stories," he said quietly, startling both of them. Before everything changed." Zara studied the man who could buy and sell countries, designer suit perfectly pressed, steel gray eyes that missed nothing, hands that had never known manual labor. But she saw something else. The way his fingers trembled slightly when he looked at his daughter, the exhaustion that no amount of money could cure. "Children grieve differently than adults," Zara offered gently. "Sometimes they need permission to feel safe again." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Safe? I've spent $2 million on security systems, hired bodyguards, moved us to this fortress, but I can't protect her from what's already happened." Over the following weeks, Zara began to understand the fortress Marcus had built. Not just the physical walls of the estate, but the emotional barriers that kept everyone at arm's length. Sophia wasn't allowed to leave the grounds without an escort. Playdates were carefully screened and usually canceled. The staff were professionals, not friends. "Your father loves you very much," Zara told Sophia one afternoon as they sat in the garden, the child's head resting against her shoulder. Sophia's response was barely a whisper, but it was the first word Zara had heard her speak. "Mama." That night, Zara found Marcus in his study, surrounded by monitors showing stock prices, pharmaceutical research data, and security camera feeds from around the estate. "She spoke today," Zara said from the doorway. Marcus's hand stilled on his keyboard. When he turned, his eyes held a vulnerability that probably cost him millions in business negotiations. "What did she say?" "She asked about her mother." The silence stretched between them, heavy with grief and possibility. 3 months into her employment, Zara had established routines that slowly brought light back into Sophia's world. Morning walks in the garden, art projects that covered the little girl's hands in paint and her face in smiles. Reading sessions that gradually coaxed more words from lips that had been silent too long. But with progress came questions. "Miss Zara," Sophia asked one afternoon while they played with her dollhouse, "why do the medicine men come to see Daddy at night?" Zara's hand stilled. She had noticed the late-night meetings, men in expensive suits who arrived after Sophia's bedtime and left before dawn. Marcus had explained them away as business associates, pharmaceutical executives from his father's company. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "They bring the white boxes, and Daddy gets angry after they leave. He throws things." That evening, Zara couldn't shake Sophia's words. As she tucked the little girl into bed, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. A small bruise on Sophia's arm, finger-shaped and fresh. "Sophia, how did you get this bruise?" The child's eyes went wide with fear. I fell down." But Zara had been with Sophia all day. There had been no falls. Unable to sleep, Zara found herself walking the halls of the mansion at midnight. The house felt different in the darkness, less like a home and more like the fortress Marcus had intended. A sound from Marcus's study stopped her cold. Shouting, something breaking. Then Marcus's voice, desperate and raw. "I won't let you hurt her. She's just a child." Another voice, unfamiliar and cold. "She's leverage, Marcus. And if you can't control her, we'll find someone who can." Zara pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. Through the crack in the door, she saw Marcus facing 3 men in suits. On the desk between them sat a small white box, identical to one she'd seen pharmaceutical companies use to transport sensitive medicines. The exchanger continued, "The experimental trials need test subjects. Your daughter's age group has shown the most promising results." "She's my daughter, not a lab rat." "She's collateral for your father's debts, Marcus. The Blackstone pharmaceutical empire was built on borrowed money and borrowed time. Dr. Vance's research facility needs subjects for the pediatric trials, and your daughter fits the profile." Zara's world tilted. The bruise on Sophia's arm suddenly made horrific sense. Zara spent the next week in a state of constant terror, watching Sophia for any signs of illness or strange behavior. She began documenting everything, photographing the bruises that appeared and disappeared, recording the times of Marcus's late-night meetings, noting the license plates of the black cars that came and went. But the hardest part was pretending everything was normal when Sophia climbed into her lap for story time, when the little girl's trusting eyes looked up at her with pure love. "Miss Zara, will you always stay with me?" Sophia asked one evening, her small hand curled in Zara's. The question shattered something inside Zara's chest. "What makes you ask that, baby? The other ladies always left when Daddy got angry, but you're different, right?" Zara's throat tightened. "I'm not going anywhere, Sophia. I promise." It was a promise she prayed she could keep. Her investigation led her to the estate's basement, a section she'd never been allowed to access. Using her security card, which apparently had more clearance than she'd realized, Zara discovered a medical facility that rivaled most hospitals. Examining tables, IV stands, refrigerated cabinets filled with unmarked vials. And patient files, dozens of them, all children between the ages of 4 and 7, all participants in something called the Prometheus Protocol. Sophia's file was among them. The clinical notes made Zara's hand shake. Subject shows promising adaptation to compound PT-47, Minimal side effects noted. Recommend increasing dosage for accelerated cellular regeneration testing. Note, subject's father has expressed reluctance, may require alternative compliance measures. Cellular regeneration. They were testing some kind of life extension drug on children, using them as guinea pigs for a treatment meant for wealthy adults who wanted to buy more time. But why Sophia? Why risk everything on the daughter of someone with Marcus's resources and connections? The answer came in another file. This one marked Blackstone Financial Holdings. Marcus's father hadn't just been a pharmaceutical executive. He'd been a partner in illegal human trials that had been shut down decades ago. The debts weren't financial, they were criminal, and now the next generation was being forced to pay. Zara confronted Marcus the next evening after Sophia was asleep. She found him in the garden, staring at the swing set he'd installed but that his daughter rarely used. "I know about the Prometheus protocol," she said quietly. Marcus didn't turn around, but his shoulders sagged. "How long have you known?" "Long enough. How long have they been using her?" 6 months. They started small, vitamins, they said, supplements to help with her depression after her mother died. I was desperate to help her, and his voice broke. I let them convince me it was therapeutic. And when you realized what they were really doing? I tried to stop it, but my father's deaths, the company he co-founded, the illegal trials from the 80s, they kept records. If I don't cooperate, they'll destroy everything. The legitimate research, the employees, the charitable foundation. Thousands of people depend on Blackstone Industries. Zara wanted to scream at him, to shake him until he understood that no amount of money or public good was worth sacrificing his daughter. But when she looked at his face, she saw a man who was drowning, who had been making impossible choices for so long that he'd lost sight of the shore. What do they want from her specifically? She's not just any child, Zara. Her mother, Elena, wasn't just my wife. She was Dr. Vance's daughter. She had a rare genetic mutation that made her immune to most diseases. She lived to be 97 and looked 40 until the day she died. The pieces clicked into place. Sophia inherited the gene. They think if they can isolate it, replicate it, they can create a fountain of youth for the highest bidders. But they need to understand how it works in a developing system, how to trigger it artificially. They're torturing a 5-year-old to help billionaires live forever? Marcus finally turned to face her, and Zara saw that he'd been crying. What choice do I have? If I run, they'll find us. If I go to the authorities, they'll discredit me and take her anyway. At least this way, I can monitor her treatment, make sure they don't go too far. Too far? Zara's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. Marcus, they're injecting experimental drugs into a kindergartner. There is no not too far. Then what do you suggest? Because I've spent 2 years trying to find another way, and I'm out of options. For the first time since discovering the truth, Zara smiled. You're not out of options. You just haven't thought like someone who's been invisible their whole life. Over the next week, Zara became 2 people. During the day, she was the devoted nanny, playing with Sophia, reading stories, maintaining the routine that had brought stability to both their lives. But at night, she was a spy, documenting everything she could find about the Prometheus protocol and the network of people involved. What she discovered was bigger than she'd imagined. Dr. Vance's research facility was funded by a consortium of ultra-wealthy individuals, tech moguls, and pharmaceutical executives who saw death as humanity's final problem to solve. They had been conducting illegal human trials for decades, moving operations from country to country as regulatory agencies caught up with them. Children like Sophia weren't just test subjects, they were products. If the treatments worked, they would become living laboratories, their blood and tissue harvested regularly to create anti-aging treatments for the consortium's members. We need help, Zara told Marcus. Real help. Law enforcement, journalists, someone with the power to shut this down. I've tried. They have people everywhere. The last investigative journalist who got too close died in a car accident. The FBI agent who started asking questions was transferred to Alaska. Then we don't go through official channels. Zara had grown up in foster care, had lived in neighborhoods where the police were often the enemy, and survival meant finding alternative solutions. She knew people who existed in the margins, who specialized in helping those who couldn't help themselves. Her plan was audacious in its simplicity. They would fake Sophia's death. "It's the only way," she explained to Marcus as they sat in his study at 2 a.m., security cameras temporarily disabled by a contact of Zara's who specialized in electronic surveillance. They want her alive because they need ongoing access to her genetic material. If she's dead, she's useless to them. And then what? We spend the rest of our lives in hiding? Better than spending the rest of hers as a lab rat. Marcus was quiet for a long time, staring at a photograph of his wife and daughter taken on Sophia's 3rd birthday. Both of them laughing, covered in cake frosting, completely unaware that their happiness was already living on borrowed time. "What do you need from me?" The plan required perfect timing and a little bit of theater. Marcus would host a pool party for Sophia's 6th birthday, a public event with dozens of witnesses, including some of Dr. Vance's people who always seemed to be watching. During the party, Sophia would have an accident in the pool. Zara's contact in the underground network was a former army medic named Jesse who specialized in helping people disappear. He provided the drugs that would slow Sophia's heart rate and breathing to nearly undetectable levels, creating the appearance of death while keeping her actually alive. "You have exactly 47 minutes from the time of injection," Jesse explained as he handed Zara the syringe. "After that, the effects become irreversible. The ambulance crew will be ours, former military, completely trustworthy. They'll pronounce her dead at the scene and transport her to the morgue where our people will be waiting. And if something goes wrong? Then you'd better pray you're a good swimmer because you'll be diving in after her for real." The morning of the party, Zara sat with Sophia in the little girl's room, trying to explain what was going on without terrifying her. "Sophia, do you remember the game we used to play where you pretended to be sleeping so deeply that no one could wake you up?" The child nodded, trusting eyes focused on Zara's face. "We're going to play that game today, but it's very important that you stay still and quiet no matter what happens around you. Can you do that for me?" "Will Daddy be there?" "Yes, baby. Daddy will be there and I'll be there, and we'll take care of you. But you have to promise me, no matter what you hear or feel, you have to stay still until I tell you it's safe to wake up." Sophia wrapped her small arms around Zara's neck. "I promise, Miss Zara, but I'm scared." "I know, sweetheart. I'm scared too. But sometimes being brave means being scared and doing the right thing anyway." The party was a surreal nightmare. Parents and children splashing in the pool, laughing and enjoying the beautiful day, while Zara watched the clock and waited for the moment that would either save Sophia or destroy them all. At exactly 3:17 p.m., as planned, Sophia slipped and fell into the deep end of the pool. Her small body sank like a stone, the drug Jesse had given her taking effect exactly as calculated. Zara dove in after her, performing CPR that she knew wouldn't work, screaming for help with genuine terror in her voice. Because even though this was planned, even though she knew Sophia was alive, watching that little body lie motionless was the most terrifying experience of her life. The death of Sophia Blackstone made international news. The tragic drowning of a billionaire's daughter at her own birthday party became a media sensation, complete with security footage of Zara's desperate rescue attempt and Marcus's anguished collapse beside the pool. But Dr. Vance wasn't satisfied. "With security footage and a death certificate. I want to see the body," he told Marcus at the funeral home, his cold eyes scanning the closed casket that supposedly held Sophia's remains. "She's been prepared for cremation," Marcus replied, his voice hollow with genuine grief for the life his daughter had been forced to leave behind. "The service is tomorrow." Open it." The standoff lasted 3 hours. Finally, Marcus allowed Dr. Vance to view the body. A carefully prepared substitute provided by Jesse's network, a child who had died in a car accident and whose grieving parents had donated her remains to help another family. Dr. Vance stared at the small form for a long time, his scientific mind analyzing every detail. Finally, he nodded. "The hair color is wrong." Marcus's blood froze. The trauma changed it. Children's hair sometimes. "I've been studying Sophia Blackstone for 6 months, Marcus. I know every freckle on her body, every genetic marker in her DNA. This is not your daughter." The chase began immediately. By the time Dr. Vance's people realized they'd been deceived, Zara and the real Sophia were already 3 states away, traveling in a modified van that Jesse had equipped with everything they needed to stay off the grid. False identities, untraceable credit cards, and a complete medical kit in case Sophia had delayed reactions to the drug. But they weren't just running from Dr. Vance. Marcus had been arrested on charges of insurance fraud and child endangerment, charges that Dr. Vance's consortium had arranged to keep him from helping in the search. "Miss Zara," Sophia asked from her car seat as they drove through the night, "are we ever going home?" Zara looked at the little girl in the rearview mirror, her heart breaking for the innocent child who had been thrust into a world of adult monsters and impossible choices. "Home isn't a place, baby. Home is being with people who love you and keep you safe." "Then we're already home." For 3 months, they stayed ahead of their pursuers. Zara had underestimated both the resources of Dr. Vance's consortium and their determination to recapture their most valuable test subject. Private investigators, bounty hunters, and corrupt law enforcement officers all joined the search for the kidnapped child. They moved constantly. Small towns, safe houses, the homes of Jesse's network contacts who specialized in hiding people from powerful enemies. Sophia adapted with the resilience that only children possess, treating their constant travel as an adventure, delighting in new places and new faces. But the stress was killing Zara. She barely slept, constantly watching for familiar faces or cars that followed them too long. She taught Sophia to pack quickly, to respond to code words that meant they had to leave immediately, to stay quiet and hidden when strangers came around. "You're burning out," warned Maria, one of their safe house contacts, as she watched Zara pace the kitchen at 3 a.m. "That little girl needs you healthy and thinking clearly. That little girl needs me to keep her away from people who want to use her as a science experiment. And what happens when you collapse from exhaustion? What happens when you make a mistake because you haven't slept in 3 days?" The mistake came sooner than either of them expected. They were staying at a motel outside Denver when Zara spotted the surveillance van in the parking lot. 2 men in suits, trying too hard to look casual, taking pictures with telephoto lenses. "Sophia, we have to go, now." But as they ran from the motel, Sophia stumbled and fell, scraping her knee on the asphalt. The injury wasn't serious, but the sight of blood sent the 6-year-old into panic. "I want to go home," she screamed, loud enough to wake half the motel. "I want my daddy. I want to go home." The men in the van heard her, saw them, started their engine. Zara scooped Sophia into her arms and ran, but she could hear the van behind them getting closer with every step. They were captured in a truck stop outside Colorado Springs. Zara tried to fight, tried to shield Sophia with her own body, but there were too many of them. Professional security contractors who specialized in extractions. Men who didn't care about the age of their target or the desperation of the woman trying to protect her. "Miss Zara," Sophia screamed as they were separated, "don't let them take me." "I won't," Zara shouted back, struggling against the hands that held her. "I promise I won't let them hurt you." But as they were loaded into separate vehicles, Zara felt the crushing weight of failure. She had promised to protect this child, had risked everything to save her, and in the end, she had only delayed the inevitable. The facility they were taken to looked like a high-end medical research center, all glass and steel and sterile white surfaces. Dr. Vance was waiting for them, his satisfaction evident as Sophia was carried past him, still crying for Zara. "You've caused me considerable trouble, Miss Williams. 6 months of delays, millions of dollars in search costs, and public attention that my work does not need. She's just a child. She's the future of human longevity. Her genetic material could add decades to human lifespan, could eliminate aging entirely. Do you have any idea what that's worth? Do you have any idea what childhood is worth?" Dr. Vance smiled coldly. "I've arranged for you to witness the next phase of Sophia's treatment. I want you to understand the importance of what we're doing here and the consequences of interfering with scientific progress." Through a window, Zara could see into the medical suite where Sophia lay on a table, electrodes attached to her small body, IV lines running into both arms. The little girl's eyes were open but glassy, and Zara realized they had sedated her. "The beauty of her mother's genetic mutation," Dr. Vance continued, "is that it becomes more pronounced under stress. Fear, pain, trauma, they all trigger increased production of the longevity proteins. So we found that our treatments are most effective when the subject is properly motivated." Zara's vision went red. "You're torturing her to make her body produce whatever sick fountain of youth you're selling to rich psychopaths. I'm advancing human evolution. In 50 years, death will be optional for those with the resources to prevent it. Sophia is helping to give humanity its greatest gift. And what about Sophia's humanity? What about her gift of being a normal little girl?" Dr. Vance's expression didn't change. Sacrifices must be made for the greater good. But as he spoke, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed, and through the windows, Zara could see armed figures moving through the corridors. "What's happening?" Dr. Vance demanded into his phone. The answer came from the facility's intercom system, in a voice that made Zara's heart leap. "Marcus Blackstone." "Dr. Vance, this is your only warning. Release my daughter and Miss Williams immediately, or I will release everything." Everything turned out to be 6 months of recorded conversations, financial records, and documented evidence of illegal human experimentation that Marcus had been secretly gathering since the day he realized what they were doing to Sophia. While everyone thought he was in jail, he had actually been working with federal authorities to build an airtight case against the entire consortium. The raid was swift and decisive. FBI agents flooded the facility, arresting Dr. Vance and his associates, shutting down the illegal research, and liberating not just Sophia, but 17 other children who had been subjects in the Prometheus Protocol. When Zara was finally reunited with Sophia, the little girl ran into her arms with such force that they both nearly fell over. "You came back for me," Sophia sobbed against Zara's shoulder. "You kept your promise." "I will always come back for you, baby. Always." Marcus approached them carefully, as if unsure of his welcome. He looked older than his 38 years, worn down by months of impossible choices and desperate gambles. "Thank you," he said to Zara, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for never giving up on her." "She's not mine to give up on," replied. "She's yours, and she needs her father." As federal agents led Dr. Vance away in handcuffs, he called out to Marcus, "You have no idea what you've destroyed, the research, the potential to end human suffering." Marcus stopped and turned back to him. "I ended my daughter's suffering. That's all that matters to me." The Blackstone estate looks different now. The security cameras are gone, replaced by tire swings and chalk drawings on the driveway. The fortress has become a home. Sophia, now 9 years old, races across the lawn chasing a golden retriever named Hope, a gift from Zara on her 7th birthday. She's in therapy, dealing with the trauma of her early years, but she laughs now. She argues with her father about bedtime and homework. She's gloriously, beautifully normal. "Miss Zara," she calls out, running toward the porch where Zara sits grading papers. "Daddy says you have to come to dinner because it's my night to choose the movie." Zara looks up from her work. She's back in school now, finishing her degree in child psychology with Marcus's support. The small apartment she'd once struggled to afford has been replaced by a cottage on the estate grounds, close enough to be part of the family, but separate enough to maintain her independence. "And what movie are we watching?" she asks, pulling Sophia onto her lap. "The Princess Bride."
Because it has everything: true love, adventure, and a happy ending. Marcus appears in the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than Zara has ever seen him. "Dinner's ready," he announces, "and before you ask, yes, I made your favorite." As they walk into the house together, Sophia between them, Zara reflects on how much has changed. The Blackstone pharmaceutical empire has been restructured. Its focus shifted entirely to legitimate research and charitable work. Marcus testified before Congress about the illegal human experimentation, helping to strengthen laws protecting children from medical abuse. Dr. Vance and his associates received lengthy prison sentences. The consortium was disbanded, its members facing criminal charges and civil lawsuits from the families of their victims. But perhaps the most important change is the smallest one. Sophia calls her Miss Zara by choice now, not because she's afraid to use her real name. She knows her own story, understands what happened to her and why, and she's proud of how brave she was. "Miss Zara," Sophia says as they settle in to watch the movie, "when I grow up, I want to help kids like me, kids who need someone to fight for them." "That sounds like a wonderful plan, sweetheart. Will you help me?" Zara looks across the room at Marcus, who nods slightly, a gesture of permission, of trust, of family. "Always," Zara promises, "we'll help them together." Outside, the sun sets over the estate that once felt like a prison, but now feels like home. Inside, a family forged not by blood, but by choice, settles in to watch a story about true love conquering all. And for the first time in years, everyone sleeps peacefully through the night. Sometimes the most ordinary people perform the most extraordinary acts of love. Zara Williams was never meant to be a hero. She was just a young woman trying to survive in a world that had shown her little kindness. But when she chose to stand between an innocent child and those who would harm her, she discovered that sometimes love is the most powerful force of all. The Blackstone family story reminds us that real families aren't always made by birth. They're made by choice, by sacrifice, by the simple decision to never give up on each other, no matter the cost. In a world where money can buy almost anything, it cannot buy what Zara gave Sophia: unconditional love, unwavering protection, and the promise that she would never be alone again. That, perhaps, is the most valuable thing of all.